to find out the absolute maximum and minimum values of a continuous function. First one, continuous function of if on a closed interval bounded set D. One, find the value of f find the value of f at the critical points of f in D. Second point, find the extreme value of f on the boundary D. 3. The largest of the values from step 1 and 2 is the absolute maximum value. Is the absolute maximum value, and the smallest, what do you say, smallest one?
Absolute minimum.
What is going on? Step 1 and 2 is the absolute. Step 1 and 2 is the absolute maximum value. And the smallest of this value is the absolute minimum value. Okay. Now we go for one example. Find the absolute maximum and minimum values of the function function of xy is equal to function of xy is equal to x square minus 2xy plus 2y on the rectangle where domain D is equal to 0 is less than equal to x is less than equal to 3, 0 is less than equal to y is less than equal to 2. Means x lies minus 0 to 3 and y lies from 0 to 2. So, okay, let us start solving this problem. So, I am doing the first figure. Sorry. 0 to 3. Okay. This is your anticlockwise frequency. This is your vector. First, you have to see that whether this functional value is continuous or not. The functional value is a polynomial, it is continuous everywhere. So it is continuous over here. Interval it is 0 to 3 and 0 to 2. Clear to all of you? Write down. Since f is continuous, is a polynomial, it is continuous everywhere. So it is continuous on the closed bounded rectangle D. Yeah. Okay. So to find out the critical point, what we want to find out? First, we have to find out the critical point. First, you have to find out the critical point. What we want to do? What do you want to do?
And we have to find fx and fy.
Yes, fx is equal to 2x minus fx is equal to 2x minus, okay,
2y.
and fy is equal to so here it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
So the only critical point is our
1,1.
clear. Okay, so the value of f of 1 is equal to, put here, it is 1 minus 2 plus 2, so we will get 1. Clear? Up to this, it is clear to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now say this line as L1 from the here to here to here L2, here to here L3, and it is L. Okay. Now in L1, the value of y is equal to in L1
0.
0.
0.
X lies in between.
0 to 3.
Yes. I can write down like this. Huh? Okay.
Yes.
So f of 0, 0 is equal to how much here it is? 0. F of 0, 0 is equal to 0 or not?
Yes, ma'am.
See, f of 3, 0 is how much? X value is 3, y value is 0. 9. Put here. Y 0.
Ma'am, why?
Y 0.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, why you have used that? Why you have used direction in the domain graph? That L1, L2, L3, L4.
Anti-clockwise direction I am writing. Always it is positive. I am finding that L1, L2, because my aim is to find out at each boundary point the value, what is the value and where we have the maximum and minimum value. At which point. So that's why I divided this here, this as L1, this as L2. Not mark this one, no problem here. It is not saying that to mark, just mark it is because anti-clockwise direction always we are thinking. So it is L1 line, it is L2 line, it is L3 line, it is L4. And on L1 line, the value of y is equal to 0 and the value of x lies in between 0 to 3. Okay, so here always you write down it is in this form. Though you are getting your multiple choice question, so that's why I am doing here it is directly. Otherwise, you can write down it is the value of y is equal to 0, that is x0 you have to write down. First you have to find out fx0, that is your value we get by putting y is equal to 0, we get x square. Then you have to write down this one. And find out this point. You may take any value 2 here also. F of, because x lies in between 0 to 3, I can take 2, 0. I can take 1, 0 also. So in 2, 0, what we are getting? By substituting x square is equal to 2, I am getting this 1, 0. I am getting it is 1. You may do like this. So, but I am taking here, it is the end point here. You may do like this. At on the boundary, you find out the value here of the domain, then you find. Check that where you are getting the maximum value, where you are getting the minimum value. So though it is x square, I am getting it is 4 and 1. Now in L2. L2, this line, the value of x is equal to how much? This line. X is equal to
3.
Yes. X is equal to 3. I am writing directly, not writing like this. And the y lies from where to where?
0 to 2.
Okay. So like this, here you can write down it is as f of 0 y x is equal to 3. So it is a value of x is equal to 3. Then y is equal to how much here? X is equal to 3, it is 3 square 9. minus 6y plus 2. Clear? First I will write down like this. Then by substituting the value of y 0 to 2, then f of 3 0 is equal to 9. F of, that is, you may say it is though a y lies 1 to 0 to 2, you can write down f of 3 1. What you get? What you get?
1.
F of 3 1. What is that? 3 1. It is 1. It is 2. So
F of 3 2.
7 1. I think it is 1.
Yes, ma'am.
F of 3 2. This point, f of 3 2. 12 4 13. So it is 1. 3 2. It is 12. It is 4. 9 plus 4 13. 13 minus 12 1. Clear? F of 3 2 is 1 or not?
Yes, ma'am.
So we'll get for the line L2 we'll get. Now L3. In L3, the value of y is equal to, the value of y is equal to L3. This is the line. Y is equal to how much? No, y is equal to, it is here.
2.
Here y2, here y2, y is equal to 2 or not? In L3, the value of y is equal to 2 or not? Tell me.
Yes, ma'am.
Y is equal to 2. So x lies from where to where?
0 to 3.
0 to 3. So similar way. So here f of y is equal to 2. 2x is how much? 2x is how much here it is? Sorry, x2 is how much? Tell me. F of x2, y is 2. It is 4 minus 4 x. It is x square minus 4x plus 4. Clear? It is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
F of 3 1 will be 5.
F of 3 1 5.
Yes, ma'am. And 3 2 is minus 1.
What is the figure? F of 3 is 9. Oh, the 2 for 1 for sorry. This for 6, it is 1. Okay, Okay, so it is your value. So f of, then it is your value, x lies from 0 to 2. So 0 to is how much? I have not written here the f is equal to 3 0. It is got it. 0 to is 0, it is 0 4. Clear? F of lies, it is 0, you can say it is 2 2. Four plus 4 8, it is also 0. F of 3 2. Already you got the value, it is 1. Is not it? Clear? It is clear or not? And you may find out f of 1, 2. F of 1, 2. It is 1 minus 4 plus 4. It is cancel out. We will get 1. It is clear? What happened to you? This part is clear
Yes.
or not? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Now you solve L4 yourself. Do it in L4. Do it.
And done.
The value of x is equal to 0.
0.
Is less than equal to x is less than y lies, sorry, y. Y lies from 0 to 2. Is not it?
2.
So here f of x is equal to 0, x to 0 and y. The value x is equal to 0 पड़ेगा. Minus 2y. This one not. This is your. I think it is minus 2y. And x is 0. Sorry, x is 0. We'll get minus 2y. I think plus 2y. Last step. Plus 2y. Okay. So then you find out f of 0, 0 already you got it is 0. F of 0, 1, if you put it is because y lies between 0, 1, so we'll get it is 2. F of 0, 2, we'll get it is 4. So at which point you have the minimum value and at which point you have the maximum by considering all this value. Check it.
At
Check
0, 0, we have minimum.
Only 0, 0. No other point. No other point. It is only 0, 0. F2, 2
No,
also
ma'am,
we
2,
are
comma
getting
2.
0.
Also.
Yes. So at f of 0, 0 and f of 2, 2, we have minimum value. At these two critical points, we have minimum value and of the boundary. And this boundary here 0, 0 and 2, 2. We have minimum value and maximum value. Here. F of 3, 0.
And 0, 3. No, 3, 0, only 3.
Only 3, 0, na?
Only. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, 3, 0.
Only 3.
Okay. And maximum value is 9 and minimum value is 0. So you make your questions are multiple choice question. So you put your value here, 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 check. Not necessary to do the other point. So here, check here where you are getting the maximum value. You may get the question, the maximum value is 9. The option given to you 9, 8, 4, 3 like that. So you can get by using this 4 point, you can get the minimum and maximum value. It is the boundary of the rectangle. Clear to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I omit?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I omit? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Exercise problem. Your classwork problems are 5, 18, 5, 18, 31, 43, and example 6. Already done. It is already done. And assignment question 12, 39, 44, 48. So now come to the question number 5. Find the local maximum and minimum value and saddle point of the function. Write down, find the local maximum and minimum values and saddle points of the function where function of xy is equal to 9 minus 2x plus 4y minus x square minus 4y square. Local maximum, local minimum. What will do here? What will do here?
And we will find a critical point, then
Yes.
check it whether it is.
First you find out critical point. Find out your critical point.
Minus 1, comma 2.
X is equal to?
Now x is equal to minus 1 and y is equal to minus 1 by 2. 1 by 2, 1 by 2.
1 by 2. So it is not necessary to do. So we will get x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 1 by, so it is minus 1 and it is 1 by 2. All of you got it?
Yes, ma'am.
The only critical point is -1 and 1/2. Okay. Then what will do after that to get the local maximum, minimum or saddle point? What will do? Second derivative test. So again, if I note fxx, I have not written fx and fy, so I have to write down. It is fx is your value of fx is -2 -2x is equal to 0. Then fy is your 4 minus 8y equal to 0. Fxx is equal to fxx is equal to -2. Fyy is equal to -8. F of xy is equal to clear? It is clear? Then you have to D, that is f of xx at -1 1/2, yy at -1 1/2 minus f of xy at -1 1/2 whole square. Is not it? But it is your -2 -8, so it is your 16 and minus g. Okay, so we'll get it is your 16, which is greater than 0, and f of xx is less than 0. So at this point, critical point, we have local maximum or minimum?
Local maximum.
Yes, right on. So function of xy is local maximum at -1 1/2, and the local maximum value itawa. Find out your value. Find out your value. Find out. Hmm?
I'm 11.
Yes, it is 11. Okay. So the local maximum value is 11. Over. Now come to the what number? 18. 18 question number. Yes. Can I meet? Can I meet?
Yes, ma'am. Whatever. Here, find out the local maximum, minimum, and saddle point of the function. Function of xy is equal to sin x, sin y, x lies in between minus pi is less than x is less than pi, and y lies in between. Okay, it is given to you. So first you find out the, what you'll do, first you find out the critical point. So f of x is equal to cos x, then it is your sin y equal to 0. F of y is equal to sin x cos y equal to 0. Okay, so here if cos x is equal to x is equal to x is equal to clear. If this 2 multiplication is equal to 0, if I am considering this is equal to 0, what you get the value of x? Because it is lies in between the value of x minus pi to pi. It is clear?
Yes, ma'am. Y is equal to 0.
Then sin y is equal to 0. Clear? It is clear? Okay. So here by substituting value, so what you get by substituting the value x is equal to pi by 2, it is 1, cos y is equal to 0. So y is equal to
Plus minus 5.
pi by 2 or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. By substituting this value, we get y is equal to this one. When y is equal to 0 at this value? Clear or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when x is equal to plus minus pi by 2, y is equal to, we are getting plus minus pi by 2. Next, when I put y is equal to 0, y is equal to 0, I am getting it is 1. This implies in equation 2, this implies sin x is equal to 0. This implies x is equal to 0. So now points are, one is 0, 0, other one is pi by 2, combination is it is minus pi by 2, minus pi by 2, again it is minus pi by 2, it may be pi by 2, it may be pi by 2 minus pi by 2. Clear? It is clear? This part is clear to all of you or not? This is your all the critical points. Minus minus लिखिए plus plus minus 1. It is clear? clear or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at each critical point, we have to find out the value. Check whether it is maximum, local maximum, minimum, or saddle point. At each critical point, we have to check here. So, for 0, 0, first, we have to find out if x is equal to okay. So at the critical point 0, 0, it is coming 0. Okay. And your value d must be coming 0, I think. Okay, check it. Then f of xy. F of xy is your xy. We differentiate with respect to y. So it is cos x cos y at 0, 0. I'm getting it is 1. Okay, it is less than 0. D is less than 0. So it is saddle point. F of y. Sorry, I'm not getting y. F of y. Y পাইছি না পারগলা y is equal to sin minus sin x sin y. At 0, 0, it is 0. Okay. So d is, you see, d is your 0 into 0 minus fxy square at 0, 0. So that is equal to minus 1. So less than 0. So what do you get at 0, 0? What do you get at 0, 0? See or not? Huh? At 0, 0, what do you get? It is negative or not? D negative means? See or not? D negative means local maximum, minimum, or saddle point. Huh? It is local maximum, minimum, or saddle point. Huh?
No maximum or minimum exists.
Yes, it is saddle point. You see? Note. You see your note. That means note below that you have not some note. Second derivative test, below that I have said that some note. If d is less than 0, you are getting saddle point at this point.
Yes, ma'am, saddle point.
Saddle point. So we have saddle point at 0, 0. It is over. Then we check for all these 4 points. So can I omit? I am omitting this portion. Can I omit? It is fxx is equal to now pi by 2. The fxx is equal to minus 1. It is 1. It is 1. There is a negative sign, so it is minus 1. fxy is equal to, so it is pi by 2 0. Fy is equal to pi by 2, so it is coming as minus 1. Clear? Write down shortcut. Already it is done. fxx. So at pi by 2, what you get? At pi by 2, if I write down here, it is pi by 2, it is pi by 2, it is pi by 2, What we get? We get it is your value minus 1 at pi by 2. Minus 1 or not? It is 1, so it is minus 1. It is 0, it is 0. So we'll get it is pi by 2, I'm writing all the values here only. take it here for the pi by 2. Hmm. What do you get? We get it is here minus 1, it is 0, it is minus 1. So d is equal to minus 1, minus 1. I am writing directly fx, x, fy, y. Minus 1, it is 1, then minus 0. So it is greater than 0 and it is less than 0. So what do you get? It is local maximum or minimum at this point? Local maximum or minimum at this point? What happened to you all? I am audible? I am
Yes.
audible or not? What happened? I am audible or not? I am asking you. Net is here. I am audible?
Yeah.
So, it is clear or not?
Yes.
I am checking at this point. It is clear? So, it is local maximum or minimum at this point?
Maximum.
Less than 0, it is maximum. So, it is local maximum at pi by 2 to pi by 2. Then check for minus. You do it yourself. Minus pi by 2, minus pi by 2. We'll get here also local maximum. Minus pi by 2, you will get it is minus 1. Here also it is minus 1. And here it is 0. Check it. It is minus, minus. It is minus, it is minus. Minus, minus. Check it. You're doing or not? Take your value minus pi by 2, minus pi by 2. I had already done. Minus 1, minus 1, 1. Minus 1, minus 1, it is 1. So negative sign, it is minus 1, it is minus 1. And it is coming 0. Clear? These 2 points, it is clear or not? Or I'll explain you again. What again?
Yes, ma'am. Clear.
I'm clear.
Clear. Next, you find out minus pi by 2, pi by 2.
Minimum.
Huh?
Minimum.
Yes. Both we have local minimum because you see it is minus pi by 2, it is we are getting minus value, and here it is we are getting plus value. So minus plus minus, so it is minus negative, so we'll get it is plus 1. Is not it? Similarly, this one also will get it is plus 1. And this value is always 0. So we'll get it is your value plus 1 into plus 1 is greater than 0, but we have this is your 1. We'll get, so it is greater than 0, so we'll get local minimum. So first you write down this value fxx and check for at each point local minimum, and you find out the maximum value and minimum value for the functional. Do it. Value. I'm not asking you about the saddle point. Local minimum at you find out. You have your functional value, you find out your value.
Ma'am, 1 and minus 1. Local maximum 1, minimum minus 1.
Local maximum 1 and local minimum minus. Okay. Any doubt here? This question? Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Can I omit all? Local maximum value at the point, that is local maximum, I am getting it is plus minus pi by 2 and plus minus pi by 2 is equal to, it is 1 or minus 1? 1. Local maximum value. How much it is?
1.
1 or minus 1?
1.
Yes, it must be 1. Local minimum, the value sabare. Dita varchina. It is your it is minus 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Functional value केते थिला sin x cos y कोन?
Sin X,
Hmm?
sin Y.
What is your functional value? Sin x,
Sin Y.
sin x, sin y. Okay. You all of you. Next question. Next question is your. Tell me the question number.
31. 31.
31. How many times? Let me see whether it is possible to do or not. At the time what's it? Only write down the question. Question number 31. Only write down the question today. Next class, tomorrow you have to prepare. We discuss the 31. Find the absolute maximum and minimum values absolute maximum and minimum value of f on the set D where function of xy is equal to and d is equal to xy, absolute value of x is less than equal to 1 and absolute value of y is less than equal to 1. This means x lies in between okay. So it is a square minus 1, 1. It is your minus 1. Sorry, 1. It is minus 1. I'll go in the next class. This point is your minus 1, minus 1. This point is your 1, minus 1. This point is your 1, 1. This point is, it is negative side. 1, extra negative, minus 1. Okay. So it is L1, L2, L3, L4. Like your example, we'll do in the next class. Okay. I'm going to omit. And can I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you to you all.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. So, how you people fared in your quiz test? Was it okay? How was your quiz test? Was it good, bad,
Good, sir.
average? Good. Okay, that's nice. So, were all the questions visible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But there were some issues with some students. Questions were not clearly visible to them. So they were at a loss during that time. I have talked to the coordinators. If anybody was having any sort of problem, that may be sorted out. So don't worry about that if anybody had any problem in the quiz. Okay. So let us start with a new chapter. Today, is there any quiz? Which subject?
Let's see.
Okay. So it's okay. So let us start our subject. So today we'll start with a new chapter. So today we'll talk about the direct current circuits. Okay. So because I told you that both AC and DC quantities or signals, they're completely different from each other. The mathematics or the algebra, the calculus, operators, all these things which are applicable for DC quantities are not applicable for AC quantities. So today we'll concentrate our discussion to in this chapter. Sorry, this is chapter number 26. Let me rectify it. So in this chapter, we'll try to cover up all those important stuff that is related to DC circuits only. These, even though these types of mathematics which are involved in case of DC circuits are also quite applicable to that of your AC circuit, but still then there are some differences. So as I told you, the major difference will lie in the fact that your DC quantities like your voltage, current, power, so all these things are scalar quantities. Whereas in case of AC, your voltage and current, they are phasor quantities. So they are definitely going to follow the vector algebra and calculus. So we'll talk about them when we'll move on to chapter number 31. So in this chapter, we'll only concentrate about the DC circuits. And remember, in case of DC circuit, your voltage as well as the current, both of them are considered to be scalar quantities. And secondly, the most important thing is that whenever we'll be talking about the direction of current, now you can see over here, I have shown the direction of current. Okay, but that doesn't mean over here I have written I over it. I have put a arrow mark, but that doesn't mean that your I is a scalar quantity, is a vector quantity. Please keep it in your mind that in case of DC circuits, your voltage and current I, both of them are scalar quantities. So that means our calculations are going to be quite easy, because whenever we need to add them, subtract them, then it is quite easy. We can simply follow the scalar addition and subtraction. Similarly, scalar multiplication and scalar division is also possible in case of DC circuits, because since both I and C, V and I both are going to be considered as scalar, therefore it is not at all a problem. But when we will talk about this AC circuits, all of this scenario will completely change. Okay, so I'm sorry. So let us start our subject. So the first most important thing is that we are dealing with the DC circuit. So how a DC circuit, or what is a DC circuit? Obviously, resistance, inductor, capacitor, all of them can be connected in both AC circuit and DC circuit. And in both of them, they are going to have different features. Obviously, there will not be much change in the case of resistance, but in case of your inductor, in case of your capacitor, your DC signal and AC signals, both of them are going to vary, or they are going to show you different features. So the behavior of the circuit elements depends on the type of signal that you are applying. In case of resistance, in case of DC circuit, okay, let me bring out a table. So let us say this is your DC and this is your AC. So let us see how this AC and DC signals applied to the circuit elements is going to give you different results. In case of R, absolutely R does not undergo any sort of change if I am going to give AC signal or DC signal. But of course, there will be a little bit change, and the most important change is that suppose I am going to have a resistance over here, and I am going to apply a DC signal. So if this is the case, then the resistance, let us say the voltage that I have applied is 12 volt, and the current that is going to flow is 2 ampere. So naturally, by Ohm's law, I know that the value of this resistance is definitely going to be 6 ohms. That's well and good. That is the correct answer. But in case of your AC circuit, okay, so suppose this is the same resistance, and I am going to apply AC signal. So this is your AC signal, and let us say I am again applying 12 volt, and the current that is going to be drawn by this is equal to 2 ampere. And remember, in this case, the voltage and current are not scalars, they are phasor quantities. Then one will be tempted to say it is 6 ohms. Okay, there is no doubt it is going to be 6 ohms. But practically, if you will see, the resistance is not actually going to be 6 volt. It is going to be a somewhat little bit more than that of 6 volt. Maybe it is your multimeter or your voltmeter method. By voltmeter method, if you will do this calculation, then the resistance may show you something around 6.3 or 6.6 ohms. Like this, it is going to show. Now, why is it so? That thing, it is beyond the scope of this syllabus, but let me tell you, there is something known as skin effect, and that skin effect is actually going to increase the resistance of the resistor that you are using in this circuit. So naturally, AC, in case of AC or in case of DC, there is not much appreciable change. But now let us talk about this inductor. In case of AC, okay, you will get some value of this inductor, but in case of DC, the value is always going to be equal to 0. Okay, so if you will connect an inductor in a, if you will connect an inductor in a DC circuit, then this inductor is actually going to behave like a short circuit. That means the reactive inductance that it is going to show in case of DC circuit is going to be equal to 0. Now, why it is going to be 0? I hope most of you must be knowing that, but when we will talk about this AC circuit, it is going to prove how it is going to be 0. By the way, does anybody knows why it is going to be 0? Yes, anyone?
Because the change in current is 0.
The change
Current is
in
not
current,
changing in direct.
if there is a change in the current, there will be an induced EMF. Okay, you are correct to some extent, but that cannot be the best answer. Okay, thank you. You have at least given some idea. Is there anyone who else who can answer this in a very perfect manner? Okay, let me tell you one thing. Can anybody tell me what is the frequency in case of AC? What is the frequency in case of AC?
50 hertz.
50 hertz.
Okay, it is 50 hertz in case of AC, but it is not always 50 hertz. In India and European countries, we make use of this frequency, which is of 50 hertz. Whereas in case of US and Mexico, Canada, they are going to use 60 hertz as the standard frequency. Now, what is the frequency in case of DC?
0.
Yes, of course it is 0. And we all know that your XL is nothing but, you people have studied this, 2 pi FL. Okay, so if F is equal to 0, so naturally your XL is going to be 0. So this particular inductor is going to behave like a short circuit, and it is going to draw a large amount of current. So, but in case of your AC circuit, your F is not equal to 0, therefore it is going to give you some amount of resistance to the flow of current. Actually, it is not resistance, it is something known as impedance. We'll talk about it in case of AC circuits. Now, let us talk about this capacitor, or rather I will say XC. Can anybody tell me how it is going to behave both in case of AC and DC? Yes? How the capacitor is going to behave if I am going to apply a DC to it?
Broken
Yes, come on.
circuit.
Yes?
Broken circuit.
Okay, it is going to behave like a broken circuit, but actually that is not the correct term. It is not known as broken circuit. Rather, it is known
Open
as
circuit.
open circuit.
Open.
Yes, that's the correct one. Okay, so open circuit means it clear means you can say that as if nothing is connected. So if I am connecting a capacitor to a DC circuit, you will feel that it is absolutely not present in the circuit itself. Now, what is the cause? The cause is very simple, because your XC, or the opposition offered by a capacitor to the flow of DC, is equal to 1 by 2 pi FC. And when F in case of DC is equal to 0, so naturally your XC is going to be infinite, and that means that it is simply becoming or it is disappearing from the DC circuit. So as we were discussing that your circuit elements, different types of circuit elements behave in a different manner in if I am applying a DC signal or an AC signal. Okay, so obviously your DC circuits and AC circuits are completely different from each other. Okay, now, so when I will tell that a circuit is a DC circuit, okay, so how can you identify that this is a DC circuit and this is an AC circuit? It's a very simple logical question, not scientific question. Yes, tell me.
If frequency is 0, it is a DC circuit.
So polarity should not be changed.
If the frequency is 0,
Sir, polarity should not be changed.
yes, that's the correct one. The polarity should not change. Okay, someone told me that if the frequency is 0, just imagine if I am having a signal like this. Now, in this case, obviously there is some frequency. Okay, but this is absolutely a DC signal, and if this type of signal is applied to the circuit elements, then also it is going to behave as if it is a DC circuit. So please don't get confused, because even if this signal is pulsating signal, rather it is a DC signal. Okay, we call it by a name known as pulsating DC, or we can call it as square waves or something like that. Or we may have, because all this thing I have explained in the lab itself. So if I am having sawtooth wave signals like this, then also it is going to be, if this type of signals are applied to the circuit, then it is known as a DC circuit. Now, in order to identify with, yes?
Sir, what will happen to a capacitor when we will supply a pulsating DC to it?
Okay, when we are going to apply a pulsating DC, what is going to happen? Just go to the internal periphery of this capacitor. Suppose, let us say this is a DC source which is actually not giving out a completely what we say, a pure DC signal. Suppose the signal, we till now we are acquainted with this type of signal, direct current, the magnitude is going to remain constant. So if the magnitude is going to remain constant, then obviously this capacitor will charge in a very constant manner, and the charging current will be somewhat like this. Okay, oh, I'm sorry, the charge deposition will be somewhat like this. But a good question you have asked, if I am going to apply this type of signal, then what is actually going to happen to the capacitor? Okay, let me tell you what is going to happen. Okay, so basically first thing is that I am giving a DC signal which is a steady DC to a capacitor, and if I am going to do that, then the voltage across the capacitor is going to increase in this manner, and a point will come when the capacitor will attain its maximum voltage. Because if you take a capacitor, electrolyte capacitor from the shop, and you will see that something regarding the voltage as well as something regarding the capacity of the capacitor is written on that, along with some other data like your thermal capacity. You saw in the market, if you will go and ask, please give me a 1000 microfarad capacitor, he will ask you whether you require it for 9 volt, 6 volt, or 16 volt, 25 volt, 50 volt, like this he will be asking. What does this voltage means? This voltage means, suppose you are charging a capacitor, and once the capacitor is fully charged, and let us say that capacitor is, let us say, a 50 volt capacitor. So when the capacitor will be fully charged, then the maximum voltage on the capacitor will remain constant, and it will be 50 volts. Okay, but this is only in case of your steady state DC. Now the question is, if I am applying a pulsating DC to it, if I am applying a pulsating DC to it like this, then what is going to happen to the capacitor? Obviously, the capacitor is still going to charge, and rather, instead of charging it in a smooth manner like this, it will take a hell lot of time to get charged. That is the only difference you will feel. And maybe suppose this one is getting charged up to its full value, and let us say 1 second. In this case, it may take you around 10 seconds to get fully charged. So this is the only difference that is going to take place. Now the question is why? Now you see, when you are applying a DC signal to the steady DC to the capacitor, then at a steady pace, these the negative charges are transported. Obviously, the negative charges, even if the potential difference is constant, the flow of the charges is not going to be uniform. Why? Because I told you that once the negative charges will start transporting and get deposited on this conductor, on the negative conductor, there will be some sort of repulsion. Okay, so because of that, the charging process is going to take its shape like an exponential charging. Okay, we will study about this in this chapter when we will talk about this RC charging circuit. Now, what is going to happen if I am going to give a pulsating DC or maybe a sawtooth wave? Pulsating DC is rather better. If it is a sawtooth wave, it will still going to take a lot of time, maybe around 20 seconds to get fully charged. Now, what is actually happening? If I just imagine if I am applying a AC signal. So in AC signal, the problem is that in the first cycle it is positive. So in this case, this one will be positive and this one will be negative. And in the other cycle, this one is negative. So this one will become negative and this one will become positive. And in this way, the net amount of charge that is going to charge the capacitor is going to be somewhat nearly equal to 0. But in case of this DC, okay, steady state DC you have understood, but if it is a pulsating DC, what is going to happen? In case of pulsating DC, first at this peak, it is going to get charged up and for some time it is going to remain in that charged condition. So over here, it has got a charge in the first cycle. Let us say that I am having the wave like this. So up till this, please see the graph. So it has gained this much of charge. Then there is a lull period. So over here, it will remain like this. Then after some time, there will be again a pulse like this and again it will charge like this. So this is actually going to charge. If I will magnify this entire graph, it is going to somewhat like this. And since the capacitor time constant is very less, so you will actually get a somewhat a smooth curve, but in that case the graph will be a little bit delayed one. Got the idea?
Yes, sir. And the same will happen with similar things will happen to a inductor also.
Of course, but the only difference between a capacitor operation and a inductor operation is that capacitor operation is based on voltage, whereas the operation of inductor is based on the current. Okay, that also we'll discuss in chapter number 28. Don't worry. Okay.
Sir, I have a
Yes?
question. So
Sure. Why
I
not?
have heard that there are some transformers made for pulsating DC.
Okay,
So-
those are known as pulse transformers.
So they work on the basis of the same principle on which inductors work.
Exactly.
So
They work on the
how
same
they are
principle.
working when the inductors will not work on pulsating DC.
Okay. Who told you that inductor will not work on pulsating DC? It will not work on DC or steady state DC. Now, in case of inductor, the EMF induced is equal to minus N L di by dt. This is minus N, please note it, minus L di by dt. Fine. Now the thing is that if only there is a change in this di by dt term, if this term is not equal to 0, then only the inductor is going to work. Now in case of pure steady state DC, this factor is 0. Now just imagine, suppose there is a pulsating DC signal applied like this. And in this case, you are seeing that, suppose this is the signal or maybe this is another type of signal, and both of them are DC in nature. But the thing is that their magnitude is constantly changing. If it is changing, then obviously this di by dt term is not equal to 0 and it is going to have some value. If at all it is going to have some value, naturally it is going to develop some voltage. Got it? So these types of transformers are usually known as pulsating transformer or pulse transformer in general. Now, there are a lot of difference between your normal transformer and this pulse transformer, because normal transformer, they operate at 50 Hz frequency and that to pure DC signal, pure AC signals, sinusoidal signals. But these types of pulsating signals, rather I will say pulsating DC signals, they are going to create a lot of losses in case of your normal transformer. because when you will go, maybe because you all are computer science student, you may not do all those projects, but in case of inverter circuits, in final years we used to design project. For example, electrical students or electronic students, they used to develop this inverter circuit. In inverter circuit, there is a battery that is purely DC. Now what we actually do is that we split that DC and make signals like this, square waves like this, and we feed it to transformers, center tap transformers. So in that case, it is going to generate DC AC signals on the output. So obviously, the very good question is that obviously if you are applying a changing DC, a pulsating DC, a triangular wave, sawtooth wave, or any wave which is DC, which is not changing its polarity, but it is continuously or intermittently changing its magnitude, then you can very well apply it to an inductor, and the inductor is not going to behave like a short circuit. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very nice.
But
Everybody is asking. Keep
but
on
if
asking out. I
current is-
enjoy that. Eh?
Sir, but if the same current is applied, I mean pulsating DC is applied to a capacitor, that will get charged up. And
It
if
will
it is
not
applied,
get charged up, but the time
But
constant will be delayed, and moreover, the charging will not be smooth.
okay, sir. And if the same is applied to an inductor, it will work like an AC, as if it works on a AC circuit.
Okay.
Am I right, sir?
Yes, of course you are right.
Okay.
So when
I
DC
understand.
signal is applied to a capacitor, pulsating DC signal is applied to a capacitor, it is going to charge up with a delayed time constant. What is time constant? I will teach you after some time. Rather, let me tell you, time constant is nothing but the time to get fully charged or the time to get fully discharged. For the timing, just understand this much. Okay, and similarly, in case of inductor, if you are applying a pure DC, the problem is that it is going to behave like a short circuit. But if you are applying a DC with a varying magnitude, but it is not changing the polarity. Once it changes the polarity, it is AC. But if it is applied, the DC signal is having varying amount of your magnitude with respect to time, then you can very well apply it to inductors. Okay. Any other doubt? Yes?
No, no, sir.
Okay. So let us move on. Okay. So at least we have got some, the main question is still not yet answered. Now, how come we will know that this is a DC circuit? Now, we all know that in a circuit there are three things. There are three circuit elements. One is the source, the other one is the load, and the source and the load are connected by means of conductor. Well and good, these are the three things. Now, in order to ascertain whether the circuit is AC or DC, simple thing, just look at the source. If the source is AC, then it is a AC circuit. If the source is DC, steady state DC, then it is a DC circuit. If it is a pulsating DC, then also it is a DC circuit, but it is somewhat intermittent between both the circuits. Okay, and those circuits we are not going to study because they are purely under the jurisdiction of electronics and electrical students, because they will be learning about all this power electronics, and over there they will be venturing more into deeper into all this thing. So we will only concentrate on pure DC or steady state DC and pure AC, that is your sinusoidal AC. So at least we know that in case of DC, the source must be producing a steady state DC signal. And if it is applied to your circuit element, then that is a DC circuit. Now, among all these things, we are not going to consider the capacitive type of load or the inductive type of load right now. We will only concentrate on the resistive type of load. So let us now talk about the resistors. We are going to have a DC signal and we are going to connect it to registers. Now, your registers can be connected in multiple number of ways. Particularly, there are 3 ways how they are connected. The first one is registers in series, registers in parallel, register in star connection, register in delta connection, registers in mixed connection. So there are at least 5 number of ways you can connect the registers. So in this chapter, we will only concentrate to only 3 types of connection: series, parallel, and ultimately from these 2 we'll study about the mixed type of connection. So let us first consider the capacitors connected in series. So all these things you have studied. I am not going to be very much detailed study. I will not do. So this is a resistor. This is the other resistor. Okay, fine. Now, suppose I will take this one as point A and this one as point B. Similarly, if I will take this resistor as point A and this resistor as point B, if 2 points are connected together, only one point is common between 2 resistors, then it is a series connection. Got it? That means the resistor is having 2 terminals, and if 2 resistors are connected in series, then they must be having one of the terminals as common. So if I connect this A point to that of this B point, then this is a series connection. Now, if the resistors are going to have all of their 2 points common, then they are in parallel connection. For example, this one is connected in parallel. This one is also connected in parallel. Okay, got it? Is there any doubt?
No,
Is there
sir.
any doubt? Okay. So when the resistors are connected in such a way that they are going to have one of the terminals of the resistor as common, then it is a series circuit. The series circuit looks like this. Okay. Similarly, if both the points are common for multiple number of resistors, then it is known as a parallel connection. That's it. Rather than defining it, if you will see the diagram, you can understand it more easily. Next, what are the different features? Well, resistances are connected in series, then the total resistance of the entire series connected resistors is given by the algebraic sum of each of these individual resistors. Okay. Similarly, if I am going to connect the resistors in parallel, so you all know how to find the equivalent resistance. So you take the reciprocal of each of these resistors, add all of them, and whatever value you are getting, that is known as the reciprocal of the equivalent resistor. And you take the reciprocal once again, you will get R equivalent. That's it. Now the other most important thing which we already have studied is that in case of series connected resistors, if I am applying a voltage, then that voltage will be the sum of individual voltage drop across each of the circuit elements. So over here you can see across this R1, I have a voltage drop of V1. Similarly, across R2, I have a voltage drop of V2. Similarly, in case of your Rn, I am going to have a voltage drop of Vn. So the total voltage drop that is applied across A and B point is VAB. And what is VAB? VAB is nothing but V1 plus V2 plus up to this Vn. That's it. That means in case of series connection, all the voltage drop across each of these resistors will add together to give you the total voltage drop across the equivalent resistors. Second and the most important thing is that the same amount of current is going to flow through each of these resistors. That is quite common. You people have already studied. Now, suppose let us say I want to find what is your V2. Now, what is V2? V2 is equal to I divided by, I into R2. So, how R2 is known to you, but how you are going to find this I? So, finding this I means you have to find this R equivalent. So the total voltage drop VAB by your R equivalent is going to give you the value of your I. So once you multiply this I with R2, obviously you are going to get the voltage V2. So this is how we will use these techniques, these mathematical calculations to solve the problems. Similarly, I have another types of connection, that is the resistors in parallel. Okay. So over here, what are the important features? The important feature is that the voltage drop across each of these resistors connected in parallel is same. That means across each individual, the same voltage VAB is going to be present. But what about the current? The current through each of these resistors, suppose this is I1, this is I2, this is I3, and ultimately if this is IN, then the total current I is equal to the algebraic sum of all the current through each of these resistors connected in parallel. So I is going to be equal to I1 plus I2 plus I3, like this up to IN. Now suppose I want to find what is your I1. So what I am going to do, first thing is that I will divide the voltage VAB by this R1. So if I will do that, I am going to get I1 because VAB is common for all of them. Similarly, if I want to find I2, I will simply divide VAB by your R2. So this is how we are going to use all these formulas, all this logic to solve the problems involving the most commonly used type of circuit, that is your mixed circuit, which are sometimes also known as networks. We'll talk about it when we are going to solve problems. Okay, but there are certain cases where every resistor or all the resistors cannot be connected neither in series nor in parallel. Okay, so let us see one such case. Suppose I will say that I am having a circuit like this. Let us see. I am having a circuit like this. Now, can you solve this circuit by simply using series and parallel connection? It is quite difficult. It is quite difficult. Now, if it is difficult, then obviously these types of circuit are not uncommon, or neither these types of circuits are impossible. Obviously, such types of circuit, it is not very easy on our part to solve by using KVL, by means of resistors in series or parallel. For that, we have other theorems, but the most or the underlying rule is that made by Kirchhoff. Now, in this circuit, at the first glance, we cannot say whether this resistance and this resistance are connected in parallel or not. This resistance and this resistance may look to be connected in series, but they are not. This resistance and this resistance, they looks to be in parallel, but they are not. So in such types of cases, when there are some sort of complicacy in reducing to series or parallel connection, what we need to do? For that, the simplest thing is to apply Kirchhoff's rule. Obviously, there are many theorems like your star-delta conversion, your superposition principle. We have other theorems like your Theligen's theorem. We have Millman's theorem. We have Norton theorem, Thevenin theorem. Multiple number of theorems are available in circuit analysis. But among all of them, the most important thing or the underlying rule is made by Kirchhoff. So Kirchhoff's rule are of two types. One is the Kirchhoff's voltage law, the other one is the Kirchhoff's current law. So before understanding this Kirchhoff's rules, let us first focus on what are the most important things that are present in any circuit or in any network. Okay. So the first thing that will come into our mind is the junction or the node. So what is a junction or a node in a network or a circuit? So here I am having a circuit. So as the definition says, a junction in a circuit is a point where three or more conductors or not three, two or more conductors or circuit elements are connected or meet. So over here, let us say that over here I am having a point A. So as you can see, this is one circuit element which is connected at A. So the circuit element is a real EMF source E1 with a internal resistance of R1. Okay, so this is one circuit element which is connected to this point A. Similarly, I have another real EMF source which is connected to this point A. And I have a circuit element which is connected to this point A. So ultimately, there are three number of elements which are, rather I will say circuit elements which are connected to the point A. So in this way, I can say that this point A is known as the junction or node in this circuit. Got it? Now, let us talk about this B, C, D. Now, are they junctions or node? Yes, anybody? Are they junctions or node, or what are they? Yes, who will tell me? When two or more number of circuit elements are connected at a point, that point is known as a node or a junction. Now I am asking whether this point B, C, D are nodes or junctions. Can I say that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So out of all these three, all of them are nodes or junctions? Yes, tell me. I want to see your understanding. Yes, tell me.
They are node.
Node and junction, they are the same thing.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Have
sir.
you
They
seen?
are.
All of them are actually junctions. But as you can see, in between C and P, there is no circuit element. That means your point C is same as that of your point B. Similarly, between point B and your point D, there is no circuit element. It is simply a conductor. So I can say all of them are nothing but a single junction or a single node. So B, C, D, all of them are junctions. But the thing is that all of them are the same point. Because in between them, only conductors exist. And I have told you, two or more number of circuit elements when connected. I have not told you when two or more number of conductors are connected. Okay? Oh, I am sorry. Two or more number of circuit elements meet, not conductors. I am sorry. Got it? Everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me rectify it. Okay, now let us talk about what is a loop. Okay, just go through it. It is a closed circuit where none of the nodes is encountered twice. Okay, now loop, we all know from wherever we'll start, we'll move through a different path and we'll reach at that same point. So the starting point and the ending point, both of them are same, then it is known as a loop. So let us start from C. So I will start from C, I will pass through this EMF source, I'll move on to A, I will again pass through this EMF source, then I will come to the point B, then I will come to the point C. So this is forming one loop, and every time I am talking about a loop, I am not going to encounter any point twice. That means your C, A, B, and C, this is one loop, and none of the point is encountered twice. Similarly, if I tell this loop A, D, B and A, this is another loop. So over here again, none of the junctions are encountered twice. Let us talk about the outer loop, this bigger loop. So I'll start from, let us say, B. So I'll move in this direction, B, D, A and C. Again, I'll move back to B. So this entire thing is another loop, okay? And as I have told you that none of the time I have encountered any of these nodes twice. Only the starting and the ending nodes is going to be the same. Got it? So here I am having 3 number of loops, loop 1, 2, 3. Now what is a mesh? So the definition says it is a loop that does not contain any other loop inside it. Got it? So tell me what are the examples? Tell me.
Loop 2 and
3.
Loop
2 and 3.
One only.
2 and 3. 1 is not a mesh. Why? Because 1 is the loop inside which there are 2 more number of loops, 2 and 3. But inside 2 there is no other loop, inside 3 there is no other loop. So loop 2 and loop 3 are considered as mesh, whereas your loop 1 is not considered as the mesh. Why? Because it is containing another 2 loops inside it. So we can say that mesh is a loop that does not contain any other loop inside it. Now let us move on to the sign conventions. So these are the basic things that we must be acquainted before venturing into this Kirchhoff's law. Next, let us learn about the sign convention for EMFs and their loads. Okay, so here I am having a cell or a battery, you can say. Now, if as I told you that during calculation we will be moving in loops. Okay, we will be moving in loops. Why loops? Because we know that current flows in a closed path, and loop is nothing but a closed path. So obviously we need to move in a certain direction. We can move in clockwise direction, we can move in anti-clockwise direction. If that is the case, then from which side to which side I am moving, that is going to be of importance to us. But why it is going to be important? Because if I move from negative to positive, that is not same as moving from positive to negative. The sign convention will change. So let us have a look on that. I know everybody knows about all this thing, but let us just have a revision of that. Now suppose in a loop or in a closed circuit, I am encountering a EMF source, okay, which is having a EMF magnitude of, let us say, E. Now just imagine if while moving in that loop, I am moving from the negative side to the positive side. When moving from a negative side to positive side, consider the potential difference between the negative and positive point to be positive. So in this case, I will consider that if I am moving in this direction, then I will consider the voltage drop to be positive E. The opposite will take place if I am moving in this direction. If I am moving in the anti-clockwise direction in a loop, let us say, and I am going in this manner from the positive terminal to the negative terminal of the battery, then in this case, I will show the potential difference as minus E. That's it. Now, let us consider the sign convention for the circuit elements, not only resistor. The same is equally applicable to capacitors and inductors. The same thing. Now, suppose in this network, I am moving in the anti-clockwise direction, and over here, I am encountering this resistance. Okay. So let us see what is going to happen to the resistor. Now, suppose I am passing the current in this direction. So obviously when current flows through any resistor, there is a potential drop. So remember, the side from which the current is entering is considered as the positive side. And the side from which or the end from which the current is moving out of the resistor is considered negative. Now, if this is the case, the potential drop is IR, and over here, since the direction is in this manner, okay, if I am moving in this direction, so this one is positive, this one is negative, but I am traveling in this manner, okay. So if I am traveling in this manner, then I am encountering the minus sign first, followed by the positive sign. So this one will be, the drop will be considered as positive. Similarly, suppose the current in this circuit is actually flowing in this direction. So this one is considered positive, this one is considered negative. But while I am calculating, I am actually traveling in this manner. So if I am traveling in this manner, I am actually moving from the positive drop to the negative drop, and ultimately this is going to be written as minus IR. Okay? Is there any doubt? Okay, let me tell you another thing. It is over here, it is only written sign conventions for resistors. But believe me, it is equally applicable to both capacitors and inductors as well. Okay? Now, with this much knowledge, we are now capable to understand what is Kirchhoff's laws. What are the Kirchhoff's laws? So, Kirchhoff's law are two in number. One is the Kirchhoff's current law, or KCL we say. Sometimes it is also known as Kirchhoff's nodal law or junction law. The other law is Kirchhoff's voltage law, KVL, or Kirchhoff's loop law. So these are the two basic laws over which almost all the theorems are based. Whether it is your Thevenin theorem, Norton theorem, maybe your superposition theorem, whatever theorem you will study in future, all of them are all based on these two basic laws in circuit analysis. So first, let us consider this KCL. Very simple, everybody knows about it. We are just going to revise. The algebraic sum of currents, rather I will say DC currents, because KCL in case of AC current is somewhat different. So the algebraic sum of DC currents into any junction is 0. Okay, that is the sum of all the current is 0. Now, this can, in other way, it can be defined as the algebraic sum of all the incoming DC currents must be equal to the algebraic sum of all the outgoing DC currents. That's it. Now, if it were a AC current, rather than writing algebraic, you simply have to write down the vectorial sum of. Okay, so that is the only difference. Now, suppose let us say this is a node. This is the node N. Now over here, you will see that a current I1 is moving towards it, I2 is moving towards it, I4 is moving towards it. So the total number of currents that is moving or towards this node, or rather I will say the incoming currents, is I1, I2 and I4. So I have written it on one side. Now, as per your Kirchhoff's law, both the current must be same, all the current which is going outside. So what are the currents which are moving outward from this node? It is I6, I3 and this I5. So if I'll add them, I3 plus I5 plus I6, then this is your outgoing current, this is your incoming current, and as per Kirchhoff's law, incoming current is equal to outgoing current. Or if I will add, or I will say the total incoming current I in is equal to I1 plus I2 plus I4. Okay, the total outgoing current is I out, let us say I out, and this is equal to I3 plus I5 plus I6. Now, over here, I have to do one thing. What is that? That means this current is moving towards, this current is moving away. So naturally I'll put a negative sign to it to suggest that it is going outwards. Now if I'll add both of them, I in minus, I in plus this I0. So in this case it is minus I0. Then all the currents will be added together and all of them are going to be equal to 0. So in the process of solving problem, we will see how all of them are going to be equated to 0. Next, Kirchhoff's voltage law. So that was about Kirchhoff's current law. Very simple thing. Whatever current will move towards the node will be equal to the total number of current moving away from the node. That's it. Next, Kirchhoff's voltage law. What does this Kirchhoff's voltage law or Kirchhoff's loop law says? It says that the algebraic sum of the potential differences in any loop, including those associated with EMF and those of resistive elements, must be equal to 0. That is, summation V is equal to 0. But remember, this is only valid for a closed circuit and that to a planar circuit. Now, what is planar circuit? In the next year, you will learn. Okay, so this definition of KVL is only valid for DC. If it were AC, simply replace this algebraic by means of vectorial sum. Okay, now let us see what is it is saying. So over here, this is plus, this is minus. The current I1 is flowing towards this resistor. So obviously this is going to be plus, this is going to be minus. Okay, now let us say that positive sign is over here, which suggests that the current must be moving in this direction. The net current, this is minus. Okay, now as I told you that Kirchhoff's voltage law is applicable at any loop. It is valid for any loop. Kirchhoff's current law was valid for any node. This Kirchhoff's voltage law is valid for any loop. So here I am having 3 number of loops. So let us consider loop 1. So in loop 1, we will add all the voltage drops and we will see that it is going to be 0. Let's just have a look. Suppose I will say I am moving in this direction, in the clockwise direction for loop 1. So in this case, I will obviously move from positive to negative. So over here, I will write minus E1. Next, I am encountering a plus sign. So this is going to be minus I1 R1 is written over here. Just have a look. Next, I will move in this path and over here, I am seeing that I am encountering this R3. And this R3, let us say it is carrying a current I1. Obviously, in this loop, the current I1 is only flowing. So over here, I will say that it is, since it is from plus to minus, it is again minus I1 R1. Next, I am encountering a EMF source where this is the plus sign, this is the minus sign. Moving from plus to minus, again it is going to be minus E2. Then I am encountering another resistor in the loop and over here I am going from negative sign to positive sign. So obviously it is going to be positive, so plus I1 R4. And ultimately, as we have told you, that the total voltage drop in this loop is equal to 0. So I equated them to 0. Now let us consider this loop L2. So in this case, the current I2 is flowing. It is written over here. So I am moving in the anti-clockwise direction. Okay. So when I am going to move from, let us say, the source, from plus to minus, I will move. So this is minus E3. Fine. Next, I am encountering this resistor and this is the direction of the current, even though it is showing in this way, but I am moving in this way. So over here, okay, sorry, this should have been minus because the direction is, okay. So forget about this, this is minus and this is plus. So somehow I made the mistake, okay. So I am moving in this direction. So over here I am encountering minus to plus. So obviously this is going to be plus I2 R2. This is again equal to 0. Fine. This is loop 3. There is still another loop over here. Now when I will consider this whole as a loop, then also you people can calculate it in the same way. Okay. So I hope everybody have understood. So tomorrow we'll do some problems on this. Okay. So thank you all.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, my pleasure.
Good afternoon, all of you.